The morning of June 6, 1944, broke gray and cold over the Normandy coast. Thousands of Allied soldiers, drenched and seasick from the Channel crossing, prepared to storm Hitler's Atlantic wall. But beneath the sand and shingle of those French beaches lay something far more insidious than concrete. Bunkers or machine gun nests, millions of buried mines. Each was capable of tearing a man apart or turning a tank into a blazing coffin. Within the first hours of Operation Overlord, American forces landing at Omaha Beach discovered just how devastating these hidden killers could be. Entire platoons vanished in eruptions of sand and steel. Engineers crawling forward with bayonets and prodding sticks were cut down by German riflemen before they could clear even a meter of ground. The casualty figures mounting by the minute told a grim story that would haunt Allied commanders for months. Yet, whilst American troops struggled through the nightmare at Omaha, something remarkable was happening further east along the British and Canadian landing zones. At Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches, casualties from mines remained astonishingly low, not through luck but through innovation. Rumbling ashore ahead of the infantry came machines that looked like they'd escaped from a madman's workshop. Tanks with enormous rotating drums thrashing chains against the ground. Armored vehicles carrying massive reels of fabric. Churchill tanks modified with flamethrowers and enormous mortar-like weapons. To the startled German defenders, these contraptions must have appeared utterly bizarre, almost comical. But there was nothing funny about their effectiveness. These were Hobart's Funnies, and they were clearing minefields at a rate that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. The genesis of these extraordinary machines traced back to Britain's darkest hour. By 1940, the island nation stood alone against Nazi tyranny. France had fallen in a catastrophic 6-week campaign that exposed every weakness in Allied armored doctrine. British tanks had proven inadequate, tactics outdated, and leadership often lacking imagination. Among the officers blamed for the debacle was Major-General Percy Hobart, a prickly, difficult man whose abrasive personality had made him enemies throughout the War Office. Hobart had spent years advocating for radical changes in how tanks should be designed and deployed, arguments that earned him nothing but forced retirement. By 1940, this brilliant but troublesome officer found himself serving in the Home Guard as a humble corporal, directing traffic and training shopkeepers to fight with broomsticks should the Germans invade. But Winston Churchill understood something the hidebound generals did not. Wars are won by men who think differently, who see possibilities where others see only obstacles. Churchill had watched with growing alarm as conventional approaches repeatedly failed. The Prime Minister needed innovators, risk-takers, people willing to try the impossible. When Churchill learned that one of Britain's most creative armored warfare theorists was wasting away in the Home Guard, he acted with characteristic decisiveness. Over the protests of senior officers who considered Hobart difficult and dangerous, Churchill personally ordered the general's recall to active duty. The Prime Minister's instructions were simple and direct. Prepare Britain's armored forces for the eventual invasion of occupied Europe. Do whatever necessary. Ignore the doubters. Hobart threw himself into the task with furious energy. He immediately recognized that the coming invasion would present challenges unlike anything encountered in North Africa or Italy. European beaches meant mines, vast belts of them, protecting every possible landing site. Intelligence reports indicated the Germans had laid over 6 million mines along the Atlantic wall. Traditional mine clearance, methods, engineers, crawling forward under fire, prodding the ground with bayonets, would take days and cost thousands of lives. The invasion would fail before it properly began. Hobart understood that the solution required mechanization, but not merely bigger or better tanks. He needed entirely new categories of vehicles, each designed to solve a specific problem. The obstacles facing the invasion force were diverse: mines, barbed wire, concrete walls, anti-tank ditches, beach obstacles, mud, and fortified positions. Each required a different approach, a specialized tool where conventional military thinking demanded standardization and uniformity. Hobart envisioned a menagerie of odd machines, each one purpose-built for its particular task. His superiors thought him mad. His engineering teams wondered if the devices would work. But Hobart possessed the absolute confidence that his vision was correct, and the political backing to make it reality. Percy Hobart arrived at his new command with a reputation that preceded him like artillery fire. Born in 1885, he'd spent decades developing theories about armored warfare that most of his colleagues found either incomprehensible or threatening. He'd commanded the Experimental Tank Brigade in the 1930s, his methods producing some of the world's most advanced armored tactics. But his abrasiveness led to his forced retirement in 1939. Yet, Churchill's intervention in 1940 gave him something more valuable than vindication: the authority to revolutionize British armored forces without interference. In March 1943, he was given a new assignment: command of the 79th Armored Division, a formation that would specialize in developing and deploying what the Army euphemistically called special devices. The 79th Armored Division became Hobart's laboratory. He assembled teams of engineers, tank crews, and weapons specialists, giving them a simple brief: examine every obstacle the invasion force would face and design a machine to overcome it. The mine problem topped the list. Hobart's engineers refined an idea from South Africa: rotating drums fitted with chains attached to the front of a tank. The chains whipped against the ground, detonating pressure mines ahead of the vehicle. The result was the Sherman Crab, a machine that would prove crucial on D-Day. The Crab retained its main gun but mounted a rotating drum, nearly 3 meters wide with 98 lengths of heavy chain. Rotating at 140 revolutions per minute, the chains thrashed the ground with tremendous force, clearing a path 3 meters wide at walking speed, infinitely quicker than hand clearance. But the mine problem was merely one challenge. Hobart's fertile mind conceived solutions to obstacles others hadn't even properly defined. For concrete fortifications, the Churchill AVREs, Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers, replaced its gun with a massive 290mm Petard mortar firing a 40 labai high explosive charge nicknamed the Flying Dustbin, devastating at close range. The AVRE's versatility extended further with attachments like the fascinet, enormous bundles of logs to fill, ditches, and the small box girder, bridge for crossing anti-tank ditches. The bobbin attachment addressed the soft sand of Normandy, mounting enormous spools of reinforced coconut matting that unrolled behind the vehicle, creating a temporary roadway. Perhaps the most fearsome creation was the Churchill Crocodile, a flamethrower tank that towed an armored trailer, containing 400 gallons of fuel gel, capable of throwing a jet of burning gel over 100 meters. A devastating, psychological weapon. American military observers watched Hobart's developments with deep skepticism. General Omar Bradley, commanding U.S. ground forces, considered the specialized vehicles unnecessary complications, emphasizing standardization and conventional firepower. The Americans accepted a small number of amphibious DD tanks but rejected most of Hobart's other inventions. This decision would have fatal consequences at Omaha Beach. British and Canadian forces, by contrast, integrated Hobart's Funnies into their assault plans from the beginning. Each brigade received attachments from the 79th Armored Division, with detailed coordination worked out during months of rehearsals. The complexity was enormous, but Hobart's staff conducted endless exercises until procedures became routine. The arrangements for D-Day reflected these fundamental differences. British and Canadian landing craft carried crabs, AVREs, crocodiles, and bobbins in carefully orchestrated waves, whilst American vessels held predominantly standard Shermans and infantry. General Bradley had accepted only 32 DD amphibious tanks for Omaha, rejecting the mine clearance and obstacle-breaching equipment that Hobart considered essential. The contrasting casualty figures would soon validate or condemn these decisions. At Gold Beach, the first crabs touched down at 7:30 a.m., immediately beginning their methodical advance. The distinctive roar of flailing chains announced their arrival, a sound soon punctuated by the sharp crack of detonating mines. Infantry following in the cleared lanes suffered remarkably light casualties from mines, exactly as Hobart had predicted.